Morning, Rob Andrews here. Rainy Friday morning, Houston, Texas, September 11th, 2015. Wanted to visit with you a little bit this morning because I was just got off the phone with a very frustrated chief executive officer of $1.5 billion private equity owned 18,000 employee firm that we're probably going to wind up doing quite a bit of work for. We've had some great conversations. And he's frustrated about his hiring process. He's frustrated with what he's tried to do on his own. He's frustrated with what he's tried to do with two different major search firms, and he keeps getting the same result. He's hired three or four really high level executives who have not stuck. He's got one that's just barely hanging on, and I keep it's like the same old show over and over and over. And I said, well, you know, I hate to say this, but I've been screaming about this for about 30 years. The hiring process is broken. In 90% of the cases, the hiring process is just broken. And I liken it to dating and marriage, with very similar results. We marry for the wrong reasons, we hire for the wrong reasons. And what typically happens in the hiring process, whether you have a search firm involved or not, is that we start to develop a list of haves. And so the typical position description that we see is a list of attributes, all based on background, experience, credentials. I want 10 years of this, an MBA in that, these job titles, this progression. And that really doesn't do much. I mean, those things are necessary, but they don't complete the picture. So, I'm going to tell you about what we've been doing over the last 21 years, and I just hope it helps. So, about 21 years ago, March of 1994, I went back into the search business and started to get resumes on high level executives, many of whom had not stayed in their positions very long. And so I started having conversations with them, and I asked, why didn't this work out? And to give you the Reader's Digest version of this story, over the last 21 years, I've asked about 3,600 either hiring authorities or candidates who didn't stay in jobs very long. In some cases, search firms were involved. In some cases, they weren't. Doesn't really matter. Um, and the four words that I've heard more often than any other four in exploring these failures is if I had known. If I had known the company was underfunded, if I had known that it was a political nightmare, if I had known that, if we had known that the candidate was a narcissist, if I had known, the P&L wasn't responsibility wasn't what I expected, if I had known he or she couldn't perform, couldn't do what we wanted them to do, all these I had knowns. Well, I think about that. I mean, that's kind of the same thing we hear at the time of a divorce, is it not? If I had known she was a slob, if I had known he couldn't, manage his money, if I had known. So all these things are, we go into these relationships, we go into the hiring scenario, and we really don't take a disciplined approach to figure out what we really want to do. We don't fast forward the tape. We don't think about specific performance expectations. We don't think about the cultural nuances, the desired behaviors. We don't think about how we expect the new executive to interact with the executive team. We don't think about what kind of culture we're trying to build. We don't do these things, and the reason we don't do these things is because we're not trained to do them. I mean, it's simple. I mean, there are no classes of which I am aware in major universities or business schools on how to do this stuff. I've got an undergraduate degree. I've got a whole bunch of graduate education. I've been to four different graduate programs. And I've never had any courses on any of this. So is it any surprise that this is hard? It really is. So, for the last 21 years, we have been studying, Alan Austin has been studying ways to avoid the most common hiring mistakes. And we're certainly not perfect. We're still dealing with human beings. But for 21 years, we've been studying the reasons for failure. We've been studying really good employee-employer relationships. We're involved in a very extensive study on purpose-driven cultures. So we're researchers as well as consultants, and we help a lot of companies with discovering their primary purpose, core purpose, mission, vision, values, all those kinds of things. So we're students of this stuff, and so what we've discovered a long, long, long time ago is that in so many cases, these failures, these disconnects, are not because there's a bad candidate or a bad company. It's not in most cases. In some cases, they're just bad actors. I mean, we screen for narcissists and people who are, hard to get along with and things of that nature. I mean, there are things that you just don't want in your organization, regardless of what kind of culture you're trying to build deliberately. But we've been studying ways to perfect, not perfect, but to improve the hiring process. It starts with a needs analysis. It starts with, and we've been tweaking ours for 20 plus years, taking things out of it that didn't work quite as well as we thought it would, and putting things in that we think will work. It's a living, breathing thing. We continue to work on it. And the needs analysis is critical. Especially in an impact position, the needs analysis can take several days in some cases. If it's a new client, if it's a very complex situation, it can take a while. In one particular case, not very long ago, we interviewed 22 stakeholders from the boardroom all the way to the customer base. This was a CEO search. Critically important search, and they'd never brought anyone in from the outside, so we had to do a lot of hand holding, and we're perfectly fine doing that. As a matter of fact, we kind of like it. And so, to get a very comprehensive view of what's necessary, of what all the leadership attributes, all of the performance expectations. Performance expectations are something that are overlooked in almost all cases. So that needs analysis is critical. And, all of this is outlined in our book, High Performance Human Capital Leadership, which I'm sure most of you have read, right? Okay. So the needs analysis, and then, the output of the needs analysis is a search spec or a position spec that clearly outlines exactly who and what you're looking for. Positioning of the opportunity that answers the so what question. Why would an A player from your biggest competitor want to come to work for you? A positioning of the company. What are the cool things that are going on within your company? And I'm not talking about cutting and pasting the stuff off the website. I'm talking about doing some hard work and really being able to articulate the really cool things that are going on in your company that you want to talk about. People don't join companies, they join people. So it's important that you talk about the nature of your really, superior leadership team and the things that, you want to showcase. Sometimes that takes a little work. You want to talk about specific performance expectations, because it's only in being able to articulate exactly who and what you want and what you're expecting this person to do that other people can listen to what you're saying or what your search consultant is saying, and say, I know somebody who's done something. I know somebody who's done just exactly that. So those pieces, while I will admit, they're not always fun. It's a lot of work, but these things are necessary to set up a search for success. And then you have to design a strategy for the search. If you're using a search consultant, you do that. That's a team thing. That's a joint exercise. So you decide where you're going to look. You map the space, and then somebody has to identify all the players. In our firm, we have 6 research professionals who do this sort of thing for a living, so they're very good at it. But if you're doing it internally, you have to identify all of the players, or substantially all of the players that you want to talk to, and you have to figure out a way to get to them. In our case, we use email, in-mail, voicemail, and by the way, we make hundreds of phone calls. There's absolutely no substitute for the hard work of making a whole bunch of phone calls. And if you don't do that, if you don't cast a wide net, if you're not proactive, then what you're going to wind up with is you're going to wind up with the very best of the underemployed, unemployed, and disgruntled. That's what you're going to wind up with. You're going to wind up with the people who are very, very good at staying on the radar screen of the major search firms. You're going to wind up with people who are spending more time surfing the net, posting their resume, looking at job boards and all that kind of crap than they are working. And that's not what you want. So you've got to cast a wide net, and then you've got to bring in as many qualified candidates that where you can evaluate those as you possibly can. Cast the widest possible net, and then you've got to have an objective way of assessing those candidates against your specific criteria. And once again, not to beat a dead horse, but if you haven't done the hard work, if you haven't, with your search consultant or with your HR VP or whomever you're working with, if you haven't done the needs analysis, if you haven't gone through that process, and it's very detailed, or it should be, and produced a spec and designed a search strategy and cast a wide net, then you won't know what you're trying to assess a candidate for. If you have, then you'll know exactly what kinds of things you're trying to determine whether or not the candidate has, and you can design an assessment tool to do that. Ours is called the 4 C's. It's proprietary. We've been working on it for 20 plus years. It's detailed in the book. You can read all about that. But it does a great job of assessing a candidate's not only can do but will do. So the candidate, in our case, every candidate has to spend 8 to 12 hours completing our assessment, and they're asked very specific questions about how they would approach very specific kinds of scenarios in your environment. And it's a fascinating thing, because as candidates get into it, they tend to do one of two things. Usually within 2 or 3 hours of getting into the assessment, they will usually either get more excited about the position, about the company, about the opportunity and the nature of the leadership team and the challenges and the performance expectations or all that, or they will go the other way. They'll say, "Oh my goodness, I read the spec. I really thought this was going to be a great fit for me, but now that I've gotten into this, it's really not." And I can recall, I see this quite often. I see consultants in our organization get a little bit disappointed when one of their premier candidates drops out of the process because they've gotten into the 4 C's, and they realize, as a result of really thinking, fast forwarding the tape, seeing themselves in the position, that it's just not a good fit for them. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for people to opt in or out, because we offer 2-year guarantees, so and we follow up for a period of not less than 2 years. So we don't want to work for free. And besides that, it's mishires are horrendously costly. So you've got to have that assessment, and then you've got an interview process, which I want to talk about in just a second, and then we recommend that you do very careful reference audits. We call them reference audits because they're not reference checks. The typical reference check, that you do just in advance of an offer with one candidate that you've already decided to hire anyway, is an absolute waste of time, and I don't know why you'd waste your time doing that. This kind of stuff makes me crazy. I actually know of major firms that use an admin person to do reference checks, just to check the box. And that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So when we do reference audits, we do 360s. We do 2 superiors, 2 subordinates, 2 peers, and we do them not in the spirit of gotcha, because by the time we do that, we do those reference audits before we present candidates, but um, we've already been down the road and we've got a pretty good relationship with the candidate. We know what they're all about. We know what their hot buttons are. We know what they're looking for. We know what it's going to take to align a company and a career opportunity. So, the reference audits we do take about 25 minutes on average. In some cases, they can take longer, and we ask each reference, and we guarantee them anonymity, by the way. So, when we present a reference, our clients will see the names of the people we talk to. They'll see the relationship they had to the candidate, and they'll see verbatim comments, but they won't be able to tie them together. They won't be able to tell who said what. So it's very important that we guarantee, our references anonymity, and we get 360-degree reference checks, reference audits on 99% of the senior executives we place, and we do it before we present candidates. We do it as a part of discovery, not as an afterthought. And it's an important part of discovery because in almost every case, even though we've gone through the needs analysis and the 4Cs and the one-on-one interviews and all of that, we almost always learn something. You don't learn much by doing one reference audit. You learn by doing, several and starting to look for patterns. So we ask, 8 or 9 subjective questions like good and bad fit indicators. Where would the candidate flourish? Where would they do badly? What kinds of things should we be aware of in terms of opportunities for growth? What are the strengths, weaknesses? Open-ended questions like that. And then we ask each reference to rate the candidate on 50 or so different attributes. And those will vary depending on the position. If it's a CFO position, we may ask questions about international cash management, treasury operations, things of that nature, IPO. But we have 50 or so different attributes that will include leadership skills, leadership attributes, management, oral presentation, written skills, blah, blah, blah. And so when we do that, and this is designed in conjunction with the client, when we do that, we see patterns. And we've all got strengths, we've all got weaknesses. When we do these reference audits, we will invariably see patterns where people are, very, very strong in most areas, but maybe they're weak in monitoring performance or removing the incompetent, or they're a little weak on detail. There are a lot of senior executives who are weak on detail, have short attention spans. But we're able to clearly understand a candidate. And so when we present, a candidate dossier to a client, they're usually, 30 to 50 pages, and they include verbatim responses to all of the 4Cs questions, which are, you can read about those in the book. But it is so far superior to anything we've ever seen in the marketplace in terms of really understanding a candidate, so that you don't have these disconnects, so that you don't have these these "if I had known" moments. Those are horrible. And one of the things that we're extraordinarily passionate about is our purpose. Our purpose, literally, our purpose for being here is to enhance the lives and the effectiveness of our clients, associates, and leaders of the world. And while that may sound fluffy and apple pie, mom and apple pie to you, it's really not. It's a very serious commitment to do everything we can to not only facilitate matches that work and last, but to make this world a better place. To really make it a better place. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We're, as a business, as a consulting firm, we're management consultants, specializing in retained search and leadership advisory, building high performance teams. We're focused on helping companies get stuff done and have fun doing it. We're really good at helping build high performance teams that get stuff done, stick, and produce unprecedented business results. So just so you know that this purpose stuff is not warm and fuzzy necessarily. I mean, it does feel good, But we know companies who've been built on purpose that outperform their comparison companies 15 to 1. I just got through spending 2.5 hours last week with a CEO who's has a $9 billion market cap, publicly held company. It's an industrial company, has 9,000 employees. It's been purpose driven for the last 15 years. Called in a pretty well-known consultant to help them build identify their core purpose, and they've built everything around it. Everything is driven by that. And it's amazing. I mean, their turnover is non-existent. Their EBITDA is 34%. In a very low margin business is unheard of. And so I'm going off on a tangent here, which I often do, but so this purpose stuff is very important. So our purpose literally is to enhance your life. If you're a client, enhance your life and your effectiveness. If you're an associate, enhance your life and your effectiveness if you're a leader of any kind, whether we get paid for it or not. So we're far more interested in fulfilling our purpose than just ringing the cash register. And what that means, to go back, so at this point in time, about 2/3 of our business is retained search, about 1/3 of our business is leadership consulting, and that's growing faster than the search business, only because the market's about 50 times as big. And so we're trying to change the way people look at the hiring process. In total, all companies, all levels, because if you understand the principles that we're trying to teach, you'll dramatically improve your hiring process, which has all kinds of implications, not only for your employees and for your company, but for the world. Because the mayhem that is caused by bad hiring practices is amazing. I mean, there are people who move their families all over the world into jobs that are predestined to fail. So we want to stop that, to the extent we can. The other side of it is that, in the United States, which is, arguably, my view is it's the best country in the world. If you come from a different place in the world, you might think yours is, but it's certainly a great country. And in this country, 70% of the people surveyed or thereabouts don't like what they do for a living. And if you take a look at why people don't like what they do for a living, why they leave because there's, lack of appreciation for a job well done. They're not recognized. They're not listened to. They're not appreciated. They're not asked for their opinions. They're not fulfilled. They don't have a purpose. They don't feel connected. They don't understand how their job fits into the overall corporate mission or purpose. And so they feel, disenfranchised. They're just not happy. They go to work because they have to. And so you have this thank God it's Friday stuff, which drives me crazy. We're trying to be a thank God it's Monday firm, not a thank God it's Friday firm. So in that regard, we're extremely passionate about helping companies discover the stuff that creates really sticky cultures and very low turnover and very high employee engagement and outstanding business results. And that requires, a lot of cases, hard work. That requires people, companies and leadership teams to do what we did a couple of years ago, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. And that is to really do the hard work to discover core purpose. Why are we here? And then everything flows from that. The mission, vision, values, strategy, everything flows from core purpose. And when you get that, then it's just a tremendously exciting time. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please let me know. This is a very complex subject. It's a 25-minute video. I'm out of time, and I wish I had more time, but let's chat some more. Okay? Thanks.